Hey guys, Alex Khan here, and I am going to give you guys my thoughts and my little review, without spoilers, on the reboot SheRa series on Netflix, made by Dreamworks. It's called SheRa and the Princesses of Power, which was made between 2018 2020, and it consisted of 5 seasons, and I believe each season was like 13 episodes long, so a very short series to watch, and if you wanted to, you could binge watch it in a week. It took me 2 weeks just because I was doing stuff. But again, I don't want to give you any spoilers, but I think part of watching the show is enjoying the journey and learning new things about the characters and, just where this series goes. Before I go into it, let me describe the reboot She-Ra series for you guys without spoilers. So, in a nutshell, it is a sci-fi fantasy cartoon that crosses My Little Pony with She-Ra, with hints of Avatar, hints of Harry Potter, and I'll just go that far into it, and that's what it is in a nutshell. If any of that sounds appealing to you, then you're probably going to enjoy She-Ra. So let me give you my thoughts on the cartoon, but first let me talk about my little history with the cartoon. So I'm pretty old, I'm from the 80s, and I watched the old He-Man cartoon from the 80s, and I also watched the She-Ra cartoon from the 80s. If you haven't seen those cartoons, forget what you know. Because the reboot series, there are some similarities with the reboot and the old cartoon, but then there's some things they don't do. For example, they don't mention He-Man at all. He plays no part at all in the reboot She-Ra series. Let's fast forward to the more immediate future. I think it was 2018, maybe early 2019. This is all before the pandemic. Universal Studios decided to put out a meet and greet character based on the Netflix She-Ra, and I wanted to meet her. Even though I have not seen the newer cartoon at the time, I wanted to meet her, but I like meet and greet characters, and I loved She-Ra when I was growing up. So when I first met her, I'm like, she looks really cool, and she was really cool to meet, but I had no idea what she was talking about. She was talking about, finding her sort of protection in the Whispering Woods, and her costume looked so much different than what I had seen her as a kid. So I wanted to watch the cartoon, but for some reason I just never got around to it. So I kind of fell off after meeting the character who I loved, at Islands of Adventure. Then fast forward to the pandemic. The pandemic started, and I was going through some really tough times, some of the toughest times in my life. I was talking to my friend, and she recommended that I watch the Netflix She-Ra series, and I had already wanted to see it, I just never got around to it. So I went ahead and watched a few episodes of the first season. I actually did like it a lot, but for some reason, I kind of fell off of it. Once I fell off of it, I just forgot about it until more recently. More recently, I started thinking about the meet and greet character again from Islands of Adventure, and I was like, hey, I want to finally, go back and finish this series, because I did like what I saw. So last week, I started binge watching the rest of season 1 all the way up to season 5, which I just finished today. And I loved it. I loved it a lot. I want to start with the negatives, is what I'm trying to say. I'm going to start with what I didn't like, and then I'll talk about what I loved. And you're going to find out that my negatives are greatly outweighed by all the positives. So my first negative, and I think it's a negative that still holds up, and this is going to be a turnoff for a lot of people, but it's the art style. I'm not talking about the animation, the way the cells move. I'm talking about the art style, the way they made these characters look. So they are overly simplistic. Now, I know the cartoon is portraying the characters as teenagers, a lot younger than they were in the 80s cartoon. I don't care about that. I'm talking about the art style. It felt lazy to me, the way these characters are drawn and colored. Overly simplistic. I never got past that fact. Every time I watched a new episode, I kept thinking to myself, man, these episodes are really great, but the art style it looked really lazy to me, and it looked really childish, and I just felt like they could have went that extra mile to make these characters look a little bit better looking than what they were portrayed as in the cartoon. There was just something missing. Like, I can't do that myself, but if I compare this cartoon with other cartoons, for example, there's a new He-Man cartoon coming out to Netflix in a few weeks. The new He-Man cartoon style blows away the art style of She-Ra, like, by far, just watching the trailers. Okay, let's compare Avatar from Nickelodeon, or even Korra. Their art style blows away She-Ra. It's like, what were they doing with the art? It's like, did they not care about the way they looked? I'm not really sure what happened, but I never got past that fact. But I still love the series, so don't get me wrong. The second other negative here, it's not really that much of a big deal. So throughout the cartoon, you see that, each of these princesses have their own kingdoms. They have their own troops. You see that there's palace guards wandering around. But whenever there's a battle, these palace troops, the foot soldiers of all the good people, they are never helping out in the battles. The people who fight the battles are just the princesses and then the main characters. What happened to all the good foot soldiers? They vanished. They never take part in it. And again, this kind of tells me that they were kind of lazy in drawing these characters out. It's like, couldn't they go that extra mile and show that the princesses also had, foot soldiers on their side? They never showed them fighting. Like those palace guards, they never fight. It kind of irked me. It really did. And those are pretty much the only negatives I had with this show. The rest of the things I'm going to say are positives about this show. Before I go into the positives, I do want to tell some people, because I know this affects some people. It does not bother me at all, because we are living in modern times. So without going into specifics, but in modern times, people fall in love. And I think when you see the people falling in love, like who they are, it might offend some people. It did not bother me one bit, though, because, again, we live in modern times, and this is the way it is now. I mean, it's always been this way, but I think it's become more acceptable. And I like that fact. A very modern look on relationships portrayed in this cartoon. There's so many different types of people, so many different walks of life. So, let's talk more about the positives now. I love the characters. Now, these characters, they might have the same names. They might be based on the original cartoon. So you have She-Ra, Adora, you have Scorpia, Frosta, Mermista, Shadow Weaver, Catra. You have all these different characters from, the Netflix series, based on these original characters from the 80s cartoons. Their names might be the same, but they look nothing at all like their original counterparts. I mean, you could see the influences, but they look a lot different now. So I guess the biggest difference, now they're portraying teenagers, well, a lot younger teenagers than what they were shown in the old 80s cartoon. And, of course, there's their art style, which I didn't like. But I did like what they were going for. I loved it. But pretty simplistic visuals, though, in my opinion. But I already talked about that. So I love all the characters. I also love that She-Ra isn't this invincible, superhero. I mean, she's definitely strong when she transforms, but she still makes mistakes. She still loses fights, and you see that she's completely vulnerable at times. So I like that more realistic aspect of a superhero, because you might be really strong, but that doesn't make you invincible. So I love that. And I also like the fact that she needs friends. Superheroes, they can't just do it alone, I guess, unless you're like Superman, but you still need that network of friends and family to accomplish things. So I like seeing that. I like the different relationships that each character has with each other. They're all different, and sometimes it gets pretty complex. And that's a recurring theme is, these relationships, they evolve, they change. It depends on alliances and shifting alliances. Alliances change, and as a result, character relationships change. And I love that this. Despite the visuals, the overly simplistic visuals, this cartoon has some pretty sophisticated storytelling, very sophisticated character relationships, and there's some pretty dark things happening. And I love that about this cartoon. You just gotta get past the visuals. The visuals it's quite the obstacle in my opinion, but once you get past it, there's a very rich story coming out for you guys. And that's another thing. The story, I love the story. And unlike a lot of other cartoons, these episodes are not standalone. The entire series from start to finish is one long story arc. So you got to watch each episode because each episode builds upon the next. Very sophisticated storytelling for a cartoon that looks like a kid's story. It does appeal to kids, but as an adult, it'll appeal to you too if you get past the first few episodes and realize this is a very good freaking story. You might hate characters at one point, but you're going to love them later on. And that's very similar to Game of Thrones. It's like there's characters who you think you're going to hate, but you end up liking them. And to me, that's very realistic because people, they grow, they develop, they learn. And I felt a connection with all these characters. I mean, of course, you're going to have one supreme baddie, some villain in there. But 99% of these characters, they are all very well drawn. Well, that's an exaggeration. Half of these characters are very well drawn out. They evolve, and the relationships with other characters evolve too. And their character growth, well, it's pretty impressive, I gotta say. For a kid's cartoon, which I think appeals to adults, it's all very impressive. So, I don't know. I feel like there's things I want to talk about, but I don't want to give spoilers. I just want to talk about this cartoon because this cartoon helped me through some really tough times. And I'm very thankful that I finally brought myself to finish this cartoon more recently because it's a very well-told story. So, yeah, give it a try. I doubt that it'll have any connections to the upcoming He-Man cartoon, because again, they make no mention of He-Man in the reboot SheRa series. I really hope they bring out more action figures for SheRa, because I know they released SheRa and Catra in 6-inch action figure form, and that was it. And then later on, they made these giant 12-inch dolls, which I'm not really into dolls. I like action figures though, but dolls, nah, I can't get into those. So I hope they go back like what they did with the He-Man series, because He-Man's making all kinds of action figures. I don't see why SheRa couldn't do that with their reboot series, because it's a great cartoon, and I think there's gonna be enough fans who actually go out and buy these figures, because those 2 figures that they released, the Battle of Etheria pack, man, if you didn't get the pre-order right away, you would end up spending $150 per figure. If you want Catra and Shua together, that's going to be about $400. And that is way too much money. So I really hope that they go back and make more articulation and update these action figures and make more characters from the TV series, because I know there's a lot of fans out there. And I hope Universal brings back their meet and greet character based on the Netflix Dreamworks SheRa, because she was one of my favorite characters to meet at Universal, or more specifically Islands of Adventure. What are your thoughts on this reboot Netflix cartoon? Try not to give any spoilers away. Like I stutter. I know the series ended a year ago, but some people are still on the fence if they want to watch it. If you give spoilers, it kind of ruins it for them. So try not to give any spoilers. But I just wanted to connect with other fans of SheRa, the reboot SheRa, because I want to reach out. And friendship, guys. It's all about friendship.